Fox Sports Radio host Doug Gottlieb and the founder of the Big Lead, Jason McIntyre. Let's start in San Antonio, guys, where the drama around Kawhi Leonard's injury appears to be growing. Tony Parker, who reportedly led a team meeting to convince Kawhi to play, aired his thoughts on Kawhi's injury today, saying he recovered from a similar type of injury that was, quote, 100 times worse, and that he didn't even think about seeking outside medical advice like Kawhi did. I said this yesterday, and I'm going to repeat it again today. The Spurs are out of bounds. And the more I hear from this, they were out of bounds yesterday. Tony Parker comes out and says even more powerful stuff today. That means Greg Popovich is out of bounds, because no way Tony Parker is freelancing these opinions. They're trying to bully and harass Kawhi Leonard back onto the court. I think it's inappropriate for the players. If Popovich wants to do it, if the training staff wants to do it, but the players injecting themselves into this guy's situation at this level with so much money on the line for this guy's health to be on the line, everybody's body and health is different.
Correct. Just
because Tony Parker recovered or his injury was worse doesn't mean he's Kawhi Leonard. Doesn't mean he puts the same kind of stress on his Kawhi, plays a different game than Kawhi Leonard. I don't like this at all. They need to stop the harassment of Kawhi Leonard.
Don't ever talk about what I do with my money, or don't talk about my family, and don't try and tell me if I'm hurt or if I'm not hurt, right? Those are the rules to athletes in a professional locker room. I am my own best doctor, and I understand that Tony Parker did technically suffer the same injury, but it ain't, because it's a different body. And what they're doing is you're calling Kawhi Leonard a liar. You're calling him a coward. You're saying he's soft. He's putting himself above team. And I understand that this is the Spurs way, much like it's the Patriots way to do in the NFL. But this is a very bad path. And this is the type of path that causes Kawhi Leonard to find a way out of San Antonio. And it's the same path that will cause others to not want to join San Antonio. Remember, this is the feel-good story was LaMarcus Aldridge comes in and he's going to take Tim Duncan's spot. This is going back a year ago. And then they nearly got rid of LaMarcus in the offseason. And I guarantee with Tony Parker's statement today, this leads to Kawhi going elsewhere.
That statement was strong. And I know Tony, and Tony is a straight shooter. And I don't know, it's hard for me to picture Tony going at Kawhi like this, but I don't know how else you could take this, even if Tony just thinks, I'm just saying what's the truth. But here's the thing. Kawhi has something to lose in this, too. I'm on Kawhi's side. I'm right. I'm with you guys. Your body is your body. However, he has money to lose. They're the only team that can offer him the 5-year, $219 million Supermax. If he goes elsewhere, trade, free agency, whatever, he can't get that offer. Secondly, winning. You are going to be hard-pressed to find a better culture than you've got in San Antonio as far as being able to win championships. Third thing is that Kawhi Leonard, there are people around the league, he's respected and a very good player, and everybody understands wherever he goes, he'd be very good. But there are those that doubt outside of that system that he would be this good, that he would be a superstar, that he doesn't make players better. There are some people that, and I think that's legitimate. Because in San Antonio, they do. In San Antonio, they make players better than they might be.
Chris, I know they've got a great history in San Antonio, but for you to talk about their culture this way when they're doing this guy dirty, I think that's totally.
Oh, it's a winning culture.
Top of it, yeah, but the culture there is toxic right now. They're going after Kawhi. Popovich at the All-Star break, I don't think he's coming back. Tense team meeting. Manu Ginobili jumps on him this week. Now Tony Parker. They're piling on a guy who's soft-spoken, okay? Kawhi Leonard doesn't talk a lot. He has barely said anything through this whole process. And now you guys are piling on him and driving. I think they're totally going to drive Kawhi Leonard out. If I'm him, I sit out the entire season, and like Kyrie Irving last year, I demand a trade out of San Antonio. I don't care about that Supermax deal. I don't want to be around guys who are going to talk this smack and you know,
Chris,
make me look bad.
Chris, I want you to answer this question, Chris. Do you think Tony Parker's freelance in this opinion without some sort of tactic approval from Popovich?
I do. I think Tony's just being honest. I've talked to Tony enough times, and I don't want to blame it like it's a language barrier, like he just doesn't have a filter. But Tony just says what he believes. I don't think this is Popovich feeding him. I could be wrong, but I think this is just Tony, and I think he's bolstered by the fact that he had the same injury. To say 100 times worse,
worse.
it was strong. It was
And to praise the strength and conditioning staff the way he did when Kawhi's been going at him and being
But I don't think there's a problem with praising the condition. They do have a great staff, and it's a staff that's overly cautious.
But you don't have to take shots at Kawhi. You can just say, for me, they were outstanding. You don't need to take shots at Kawhi. That's dirty.
Well, look, the point, though, I've heard the opposite. This is the third best player in the NBA. Okay, you got Durant and LeBron. They're 1 and 2.
He's regarded as that.
Right, and he's an incredible, but he's a much better two-way player. And I'm absolutely sure that the Lakers would take him and that he would fit in quite well to their culture and coming back home. It's just a dangerous game to play. I have no idea. I honestly don't know if Pop is teeing him up. But when you say he was 100 times worse, now you're calling him soft.
This is a teammate for 7 years.
You're calling him soft. And that's no athlete wants to be called soft ever, especially one that's a great defensive player and the type of player that Kawhi purports himself to be. If you're saying you're soft and you're saying you're selfish, your body, your contract is above team, that means you're the anti-Spur. This is the beginning of the end of that relationship.
To me, Popovich no different than Belichick. Nothing goes on in that organization without those guys feeling like they have Pop support in bullying and harassing this guy. They're out of bounds. All right, to the Sweet 16, where we saw a couple of thrillers and some more big upsets last night, with Kansas State toppling Kentucky, while Loyola of Chicago continued their Cinderella run with a win over Nevada. FSU also got in on the upset action, blowing out Gonzaga, while Michigan embarrassed Texas A&M. For my money, Kansas State's win over Calipari's Kentucky Wildcats was the most impressive thing we saw last night. And I say that because I thought the officiating was so atrocious. The officiating dominated the game. 3 Kansas State players, 2 Kansas State starters fouled out of the game. I thought the officiating was leaned towards Kentucky, but I just thought the officiating had way too much influence over the game. And then when you add in that K-State's best player was limited to just 8 minutes, Dean Wade, that he could barely play, and somehow they figured out a way to hold off Kentucky and win that game. Again, I'm not saying K-State's going any further. I'm not saying K-State is a threat to win the national title. But for my money last night, they were the most impressive team.
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt, especially people who are familiar with K-State and their more hate than in the love-hate with Bruce Weber, right?
Yeah.
They've never been happy with having Bruce Weber as their coach since Frank Martin left. And, of course, Bob Huggins got that program up and running. And to do it without Dean Wade and Xavier Sneed being in foul trouble those last 8 minutes and Barry Brown not shooting the ball well. But to me, that was a statement about you have kids that second year, third year, fourth year at K-State, balls on the floor. They got the 50-50 balls. They made the plays down the stretch. They followed the assignments as opposed to Kentucky. I actually think Calipari did a pretty good job with the talent he had. There's this assumption that, well, he's just rolling out there 6, 7 lottery picks. Like, there's probably 2 players to be selected in this year's NBA draft. Maybe 3 if Hamid Diallo goes to the pros. Because they can't shoot. And if you can't shoot, you don't have skill. It doesn't matter how athletic you are or how good you look in an AAU game. Last night was about skill. Michigan had more skill than Texas A&M. Kansas State had more skill. Loyola had more skill. It's about basketball changing from length, quickness, athleticism. You need all those things, but you also need skill to knock down shots.
No, I'm with you, and that's why Kentucky's athletic, talented, don't really know how to play together, these freshmen. Like you said, some of them probably have their eyes on the NBA, so they weren't going the extra mile like Kansas State did. But I think Michigan was the most impressive. I mean, they actually bludgeoned a team that trampled the second seed North Carolina a week before. They shot 62% from the floor. They hit 14 threes. They only turned it over 7 times. I think Michigan is looking like a team that can win the championship.
That's 2 separate arguments. I agree with you there. I did come away saying, oh, Michigan is the team that could win the title. But for last night,
are you wearing a Chris Webber jersey under that? I just want to check. I know you're tight with Michigan. Guys, I'm sorry. Kansas State was impressive. I'm going Loyola, okay? Think about Loyola's path. They were the best story coming out of the first weekend. I know UMBC was big. But Loyola was, nobody had ever heard of them. You got Sister Jean, more popular than any player left in the tournament. Imagine that pressure, the spotlight on you. The Today Show's talking about Loyola. The late night shows are talking about Loyola, and everybody's rallying around them. They opened the game down 20-8. Oh, Nevada's going to run away with it. And Nevada came back Eventually, Loyola goes down to the end. For the third time in 3 games, they hit a game-winning shot in the last 15 seconds. To me, I'm waiting for Loyola to fold. I thought that was impressive.
Here's why I disagree with you. Nevada's got a very short bench and rotation. Eventually, that's going to catch up with you, and I felt like that's what caught up to them at the end. I do think it's very impressive, and Loyola's a great story if you're into the Sister Jean movement. But
your mom loves that. I know she's talking to you about
yeah, people love that, and I get it. It's a cute little story. But, again, beating a shorthanded Nevada team that no one really knew much about and had already overachieved, as opposed to Kansas State, Kentucky, Coach Cal, the one-and-done system, and an officiating crew that called 51 fouls.
No, it was awful.
Did Kansas State win, or did Kentucky miss 15 free throws, seemingly every one at the end of the game, to kind of choke that away?
Yes, but part of that is the inherent problem with Kentucky all year is they just didn't recruit enough shooting. You know, to me, and look, the Michigan thing, a lot of it is really about mismatches. You know, if you're Michigan, they spread you out. They put their big guy at the top of the key, and everybody else is spread out. That's really hard for Texas A&M, playing essentially 3 big guys. So some of it was mismatches. But a lot of it is in how, for a long time, assistant coaches have evaluated players. And they go into a gym, and they sit there, and they go, I want that guy. He's long, he's athletic, he can guard, he can move. We're going to make him into something. And whereas Michigan and John Beilein, they're not picking off the top of the deck the way they used to recruit at Michigan. Now they got to get student athletes to get in school and get them to get better. And how about this? You know, you got Charles Matthews, who had 18 for Michigan. You know, he played at Kentucky last year. You know, he averaged 1.5 points at Kentucky, right? So we take you and we put you in a skill-based system where we share the basketball and open up the floor, and look at how much better you are, how much more we can get out of your talent.
A good case for Michigan.
Yeah, switching your sides. Come on, flip-flopper.
Part of it is, look, I think Bruce Weber is one of these really good coaches that people are just insane about. You know, we judge teams and their success and their failure based upon the last game of the year instead of, hey, you're in Manhattan, Kansas, and you're competitive every year, and you're not cheating, your kids are graduating. Like, that's what it's supposed to be about.
Well, I was just going to say, all the foul calls disrupted the flow of the game. There really was no flow, and that would have favored players, the type of players that Kentucky have, athletic, long,
It's funny because I think the intent of calling it tight is so that there's more movement, so that, you know, if the more athletic teams win, but it actually had the opposite of the intended effect.
All right, coming up, stunning news out of the NFL. New Philadelphia Eagle Michael Bennett indicted today on a felony charge. We'll give you our reaction. And at the 30, the remarkable scene in Sacramento last night is a bad sign for the future of sports.